Hey guys, it's Carla.
Hey.
That's not Mary.
No, I'm Mercedes.
Welcome to another episode of Lip Service, not just Lip Service, rather. Today we have a great episode. I'm pretty excited about this. This is going to be a real life, transparent, open discussion with Mercedes about her experience starting her aesthetics business. She will tell us all about how she got started. I have a lot of questions for her about what she did to grow her business. Spoiler alert, she grew it from zero to about $100,000 in gross revenue in about 9 months.
Yeah.
So really just had some great success and did it really all by herself, which is what a lot of our mobile injectors at Smiley and then our independent injectors and then people just out trying to get their business going do. So we are super pumped to hear from her, and I thought we could just start out with and get right into it with obviously tell us a little bit about your background, your history before doing aesthetics, and then what made you decide to do aesthetics.
So majority of my time was spent in the ER, and I'm actually double board certified in emergency nursing, so ER was like my passion. I absolutely loved it. I worked in a men's prison for about 5 years as well. That was a lot of fun. And then I started working from home doing telephone triage. So I was bored. Truth be told, I wanted to stab people. You know, I really missed that. Like
Yeah.
the ER nurse in me wanted to start IVs and do things. So I started trying to look for, what alternate business options are. I didn't really want to work for anybody because I wanted to make my own schedule. And I did actually research for probably 3 or 4 months before I came across aesthetic nursing, and I was like, you know what, these 11s, they've really been bothering me.
Yeah, this wrinkle pissing me off.
I could do something with this because it was like the end of COVID, and I
Sure.
woke up and I had 11s.
Makes
And
sense.
I was pretty upset. So I started researching, and I came across several different companies, and then I found Smiley, and it just was, I don't know, it seemed completely different. And then you had that at the time you were doing like the weekly interest calls. Do you remember that?
Oh,
on
yes,
Zoom?
I do remember that.
And so you were downstairs
Yeah.
at like a card table set up, and
Yeah.
you Zoomed with me, and you just were like, yeah, well, I'll tell you everything, and you did, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, that is the mantra there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You said one thing that triggered me. It's kind of unrelated, but how many nurses move away from the bedside and then want to do
Right.
something associated with their skill set? And we liked being with patients, physically doing tasks. A lot of us are very task oriented. So aesthetics certainly gives you best of both worlds. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to go back into the hospital and do all that, but you can do some of those nursing things. So that's cool. So you found us. That's great. I will share my first experience with Mercedes was funny. I can't help it. I tell everybody, generally even in our classes now that we teach, Mercedes came to class. You were late. You were late?
I was
weren't you?
late.
She was late, and she comes in like a little ball of fire, and sits down and it's flushed for being late. I don't really care. But I'm telling, I think, my background at the time,
Yeah.
and I mentioned HCA, which I'm very open about, absolutely a big fan. And Mercedes, I mean, I could feel her. She was sitting right in the corner seat. I could feel her prickle, and I was like, yeah. And she was like, I don't like HCA, and I was like, okay.
I think my words were, I just escaped from HCA.
Yeah, I just escaped from HCA.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was so much passion behind it. I was like, okay, cool.
I had 11 years with them, so
Yeah.
it was an escape.
Yeah. So another good example of, different experiences, whether that's at an individual hospital or whatever the case is. We've talked about that. But so I was like, okay, this girl is going to be a lot of fun. And here we are, again, spoiler alert, at the other end of that journey, right at a year later.
Yeah.
Right at almost exactly a year later, and she's full-time with us as our director of training and strategic growth. So it's fantastic. Okay, so let's dive into, you got trained with us.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do before you got trained? Because a lot of injectors make the mistake, in my opinion, or show up, and you've witnessed this. I'm like, where are y'all at in y'all's businesses? How many of y'all is this the very first, you saw a training and you thought,
Yeah.
whoop, I'm going to do that. And like half of the people raise their hand. And
Yeah.
I'm always like, okie dokie, we have some work to do. So what did you do beforehand, if anything?
I did a lot of obsessive research. I'll be honest.
Really?
So,
You don't
shocker.
say.
Yeah. And I talked to my dad and my brother because they both own their own businesses and are very successful, and just kind of was like, hey, do you think I can do this? I'm a nurse. I have no idea how to do anything businessy. I pay someone to do my taxes. And so I just kind of researched, the statistics for new businesses, like how successful they are.
That's kind of
which
scary.
is terrifying, right?
Yeah.
And I still apparently went with it. And then startup cost potential. And then I got my books in, the ones that are recommended on the website, and I studied the heck out of those books. I made note cards, I highlighted, I flagged. I mean, it was like I was in nursing school.
Yeah.
Because, it's a big deal. It's your face, right?
Yeah.
So I was nervous, and I was expecting, to come to class, and I didn't know who was teaching it. You, Mary, I wasn't sure, but I was expecting you guys to ask us questions, and I didn't want to be put on the spot and look like an idiot.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something that's really important to note. That's not a negative, but it just is what it is. Not only are you learning a whole new bit trade in owning and operating a business, you're also going into really a new field of nursing that you've never been in. It has a lot of the same skill sets like all of nursing that you had in the past, but it's a double-edged sword there. So it's we've always prided ourselves on making it very easy to do this, to own and operate your business. And we try to give you as much as we can, but there's still a big hump there that you have to get over. And if you're not willing to do the work on the front end, then you're already setting yourself up for failure. So you were very clearly prepared. I remember it like it was yesterday. Clearly knew what you were talking about. Clearly had studied, and that's the biggest thing, because it all is very simple.
It's huge, yeah.
It is huge, and it's very simple though. Content, when it's all said and done, that requires practice, much like anything. But starting an IV is simple. There's 5 or 6 steps, and you'll know them in no time. It's just hitting the vein, just takes time to learn. Okay, so you came to class well prepared, and then after you left class, what were you thinking, like immediately after, because I do a business hour that can be a little overwhelming, especially for nurses. What were you thinking? What were the next steps?
Okay, so the biggest takeaway that I had from that day, something that you said, it just reverberated in my mind over and over again. And you said, we can help you with everything, but we can't give you clients.
Right.
And that just, that stuck with me, and I just kept thinking about that. I'm like, okay, so she can't give me clients. So how am I going to get clients? Can I actually do this? Can I hustle? And I know my husband, he was like, yeah, you can hustle because you've been hustling in our neighborhood, which is how I paid for the class and how I actually made my first order. I was working from home at the time. I had been doing that for just like 2 years or so. And again, I was missing that patient contact. And so I was like, I'm going to babysit. One of my nursing certifications is, it's certified pediatric emergency nurse. So I advertised that in the neighborhood, and people were really excited about it.
Yeah.
So I babysat like crazy.
Yeah.
And then I dog sat and cat sat.
Yeah.
And dog sat, I'm talking like I would have 4 or so dogs in the morning before work, 4 dogs on my lunch break, which was an hour, thank goodness, and then 4 dogs after work, and then before I went to bed.
Have to go let them out again. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I killed it in like 1 month. I made close to $5,000.
Yeah.
And that was what I used to start my business. But what did you ask me?
Well,
what was I thinking?
No, yeah, well, right after you got out.
Yeah.
But I actually, you brought up, that's a great point to bring up about how you paid for the startup. And this again, a lot of this is in light of Smiley. We're very transparent about what we think it's going to cost to get started, to get your first client in the door and all those before you start actually making $1 back. And I think a lot, and I've said this before, a lot of nurses are very, very much like want to spend $5 and make $1,000.
Right.
And it's like, wait a second, you're starting your own business. This is, a lot of people will spend $100,000, $50,000, $200,000, $1 million starting a business, hoping that they, obviously make that ROI, that return back on what they invest. But it is an investment, and it's something that you have to plan for. If you are one of those people who are paycheck to paycheck, and I don't know anybody's financial status, and you're like, I'm going to do this to fix my financial problems, that's probably not the answer. Yeah, unfortunately, that's tough, but it's not a great solution because you can. It puts a whole nother level of stress, and one misstep, one bad day, one bad week, 1 week where you're sick and can't take clients, and you fall further and further behind. And that's why one of the reasons a lot of businesses fail. So I think it's really important to note that you took the time to hustle and save money and make a plan before you just hopped right in. Whether that was just a month, you can do it in just a month. The other thing I want to bring up, because we're a very practical podcast here, is you don't have small children.
Right.
And that's not good or bad, but that is of note. A lot of nurses who are looking to get away from the bedside, a lot of people in our age group still have young children.
Right.
It would be very difficult to do those things. You have a supportive husband, so I always bring up some of those things because we are not talking about, with the most respect, a single mom struggling to make ends meet who's got 4 kids and no help. Like these scenarios that we paint just aren't going to fit every single person.
Yeah.
So I always want to kind of bring up those disclaimers because we never want to, discourage anybody. But the pictures we paint, we try to paint the average, and just not everybody falls into the average. So anyway, okay, so you get done with class. Thankfully, you're not really behind financially. A lot of people are. They've spent $5,000 that they either saved for or maybe didn't have, or whatever the case is, which is what we see a lot. So you're a little different in that regard. However, I know you, and I know how much pressure you put on yourself. So go ahead.
Tremendous amount. So that was when I talked to my dad, and he said, well, keep in mind, most businesses are in the red for even 2 years,
right.
And so he's like, you just need to think that through. And he went over startup costs with me, and he's like, okay, I mean, it sounds like you could maybe make your profit back pretty quickly. And so I got started with all of the steps that you gave us in class, getting my LLC, getting my malpractice insurance, literally just every single thing that you had. I think we had a handout.
Yeah.
Like the business PowerPoint, and I just wrote all that stuff down, and I got to work.
Yeah. Getting all that stuff. Yeah. How long was it from the time you were done with the class until the time you had your first client?
So I did class on November 19th, and I took my first client on December 11th.
Okay, so you had a pretty good gap.
Yeah. And it was terrifying.
Yeah. And how did you feel about that? You said it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I was posting all over online, and it turned out that the Nextdoor app was kind of what got me my first several clients. Now, mind you, my post in Nextdoor app had so much negative response. People were losing their minds that I was practicing illegally. And finally, this one girl, I don't even think she was a nurse, she just said, has anyone clicked on the website that she provided? Number one, she has more letters behind her name than majority of nurses that take care of you. And number two, if you go to her website, it says who her medical director is and how she views safety as her number one priority.
Yeah.
She never became a client, but just the fact that she, took up
said
for
that.
me.
Yeah.
And so I had several clients that called from Nextdoor, and I remember the first one, she does not know that she's my first client.
We will not tell our first clients because
no.
we are confident in our abilities.
Right. But she's like, wow, they really tore you up on Nextdoor, didn't they? And I'm like, oh, is that how you found out about me? She's like, yeah. But I'm like, but it didn't bother you? She was like, no, I looked at your website and you looked legit. So I was, there was another injector that I took a class with, or that took the training class with. Ashley Palma was her name. And she did my lips, I did her Botox, she did my Botox, and so we kind of switched information and connected. And honestly, I really truthfully would not have even gotten to this point of having my first client had it not been for having a buddy.
Yeah.
Actually, she really, we did everything together, and she had already had her first client. And I remember that I called her on the way, freaking out. I had practiced all my dots and everything, and I get to this client's house, and I'm getting ready, and here's my hand, and I was like, stop it, Mercedes. You have literally done life-saving things in the ER before. You can stab someone in the face. It's not that big of a deal. And I texted you my dots to make sure it was okay. And then
Did I change them or keep them?
You kept them.
Oh, good.
And then I asked you 2 = 5, right? Is 2 5? 2 is 5, right?
What?
2 units is 5 units.
Right.
I had that last minute brain fart of, oh my goodness, how much Botox am I putting in this woman's face? And I did it. And when I left, I called Ashley almost in tears. The panic that ensued was more than I had ever experienced before as a nurse.
Yeah.
And I pulled in my driveway, and I was like, I'm going to vomit, Ashley. This is happening. And I said, I think I put the wrong amount of Botox on one of the spots. And she's like, by how much? I'm like, 2 units. It was a whole 2 units.
I put 4 on one spot instead of 2.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a lot of anxiety, and what my anxiety drove me to do was to research like a maniac.
Yeah.
So I stayed up all night watching videos of injectors injecting and saying, yeah, I did do that. Maybe I didn't mess up her face. Or, oh my gosh, no, I didn't do that.
I poked her 2 millimeters to the right.
Exactly.
It's over. It's over.
That's how severe it was.
Yeah. So you're bringing up great points about you know, we honed so much on safety and compliance in class that I think it does send people with a fear in them, which is kind of what we want. Yeah. But hopefully drives the ones with the entrepreneurial and educational spirit to educate themselves further. But the point you're bringing up is after all of that preparation, and I know you very well, and you're very detail oriented, you were still freaking out over using an insulin needle in someone's skin, which you've done a million times.
Right.
The point of that is a positive to all those out there who are like, still haven't taken their first client or took their first couple and feel like total failures, or God forbid your first client isn't happy. That really can shut some people down. And the fact is, we all go through that exact same thing. If you don't think I was sweating through my freaking clothes with my first client, acting like I knew exactly what I was doing and I'm losing it, we're all the exact same. Every single one of us is freaking out that first time. Just like when we took our first set of vital signs. I mean, I didn't even want to knock on the door when I was I was a tech. Didn't even want to knock on the door. I was like, okay, I'm going in here. It's Mr. Smith. Is it Mr. Smith? Oh my God, is it Mr. Smith? Was that the other room? Is this the right room? Is it Mr. Smith? Like, I can't even knock on the freaking door, you know, so we all experience that, but that to me is a quality we should have. We always talk about the wild, wild west in aesthetics and nursing, and those people who don't have that, who are like, I got this, right off the bat, and you're like, yeah, you're terrifying. Yeah, you're a terrifying person. You should have confidence, but if you don't have nerves the first time, then you're kind of a terrifying person. Okay, so you had that first client, you make that first sale, which the first time someone calls you, it is the most exciting thing. I mean, I remember I've got a client, like it's the first sale, it's the first dollar you make. That's super exciting. So after that, after your first one, was your second one easier? And then talk about getting your first client is the hardest, as you talked about, that is a common principle. Did clients start coming faster? And then how was your experience with those clients?
Well, technically, my second client was a lot easier because while I was at my first client's house, she called a friend.
Amazing.
So I had a second one.
Perfect.
But then after that, I had a difficult time. I had a lot of people reach out that wanted services but wouldn't quite, pull the trigger, so to speak. And so I got to where I did something that you and Mary really don't recommend, which, not to say that you don't recommend it, but you guys are, kind of, like you like to hold firm on prices and not devalue
unless you're garnering new clients. So so I know what you're, go ahead.
So I was looking for content models, basically is what I said. I'm newer in this part of nursing and I just really want some content models, so I kind of lowered my prices and I reached out specifically to my friends and family to let them know and see if they knew anybody. Like, I didn't put that on social media. So I was able to get quite a few lip filler clients under my belt that way, which made me feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
And so that was really nice. And then after that, January kind of picked up, and then February picked up even more. And then March was like, wow, this is my craziest month ever. But before I even get that far, what Ashley Pummel and I did was we sat down and we made business goals. So my goal number one was that I wanted to recoup the money that I spent on like the class and all of my first
Did you want to do that gross sales or with profit?
With profit.
Okay, because there's a big difference, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we talk a lot about business and try to educate nurses on that, the difference between gross profit and net profit.
I Googled that.
And a lot of people will. Gross being, I put 64 units in your face and I get $640. That is gross revenue on it, but that doesn't take out the cost of goods sold or the gas it took me to get there, or the needle I used, and all of those things that go into the expenses that come out of that number to get you to net profit. So, knowing your profit margin. So if you make $500 on a client and you have a 50% profit margin, that means you're going to net $250. So if you're doing what you did, you'd be able to take $250 off the $5,000 you started with. So just a little short business tip there. But go ahead.
Because again, I had to Google that to figure that out. So so we made business goals and then like long-term goals, right? And then also we focused on doing monthly goals. So I'm going to get 5 new clients this month and I'm going to book 1 Botox party this month, that type of stuff. And
again, you keep bringing up things. Mercedes did it so well, which is why I always put the disclaimer in that her journey is almost perfectly done. Because what 5 new clients in a month and 1 Botox party tells you is realism. It is realistic. Saying I want to get 20 clients this month is not realistic. Even 10 may not be realistic. If you crush the first 5 in 3 days, congratulations.
Yeah.
Do go ahead. The rest of the month I'm going to try to get 5 more. Sure, I can see somebody doing that. But we set unrealistic goals and expectations. You know, I had one of our injectors call me recently, and she had been doing it for 3 weeks, and she'd already grossed like $5,000. I mean, she was crushing it, but she had spent all in on everything she had done, every single thing, and she owned a collagen pen outright, all of it, tips, everything, had paid for everything, and was at like maybe $9,000, and had literally bought a collagen pen, a whole nother service, a piece of capital equipment. And she was concerned that it had been 3 weeks and she'd only made $5,000 and she'd already spent $8,900. And I was like, I mean, and that's not a knock against nurses. We're just so far off from understanding, you know, those two numbers and what they actually mean. And depreciation, and we could get into some really severe things. So setting realistic goals for yourself in business, you know, I don't want someone to be in the red for 2 years, but to get back to where you're actually netting profit month over month in aesthetics, I mean, a minimum of 6 months, a minimum, if you put every penny back into your business. And so that's a big, let's talk about that. So, and you're managing yourself in those first few weeks. Are you taking money out? Are you allowing yourself to, I'm going to go get my nails done with this $12 profit? Any of that stuff. Talk about that.
I didn't take any money out until month 9 when I decided to quit my full-time job. And then I realized that I needed to be able to take money out to pay myself. But everything I put back in the business. And I didn't even buy a microneedling pen until I had recouped all of my startup costs. Like that was one of my goals. You know, I'll add a new service once I've
can afford it.
Sure. And once I feel comfortable with this other service too. And then, and of course I had, you know, like an Excel spreadsheet, you know, set up and all of that stuff to put my expenses in so I could keep track of it. And in the meantime, like in the background, I was making my website. I was learning how to do, what was the question that you asked me?
Just the money that you, and you're on track.
Yeah, so I was learning how to make ads. I was learning about marketing just in general because I'm not a marketer. I have no idea how to do any of that stuff. So I was just doing tons of research about how to make sure that I don't waste the money that I just put in. Well, and
you're hitting on some other things in marketing. You know, that is a beast for a lot of people and is scary. But the good thing is in aesthetics, because social media is absolutely the #1 way to go above everything else. We stand on that very firmly. Facebook, thank you Mark Zuckerberg, and Instagram, connect. It's free. Meta for Business is free. It allows you to do so many things for absolutely free. Manage leads. It's a CRM. It is so many things. Ads and stuff cost money, but it'll literally walk you through how to make an ad and what you can and cannot do, how to make sure it's compliant. Like employment, you can't pick an audience because you can't, you know, you can't discriminate. So you you can't have a specific audience. You can only do location, things like that. It's free. It's a free tool.
They have 24/7 support.
They do. It's a wildly underused tool. But again, it's not because we don't want to do it. We just don't know. Which is why we sing it from the rooftops. Mary and I are just all about doing those things for marketing. And again, talking about getting on track with how you spent your money. It's free, so that if you can manage that, and you know, you'll get a lot of things from marketing companies telling you that you don't know what you're doing, managing ads and all that kind of stuff. That may be true for bigger companies, possibly, but because it's at your fingertips to learn, I don't want to undervalue anybody's digital knowledge and the marketing experience. You, when you're starting out, can absolutely do it at a level that garners you clients, because we've talked about your ads and they were successful, and you've garnered clients from those. So. Is it perfect, and could you have garnered a couple more? Sure, but how much would you have had to pay a company to make them that much more successful, you know, to get those clients? So some of those, what you're describing is really a bootstrap mentality. When you take everything that you made and you put it right back in your company, and you know, as long as you eat food and things like that, that is very much a bootstrap. You're going to learn to do it yourself instead of outsourcing. However, there comes a point in time when outsourcing is necessary. So talk about at what point that became necessary for you. You're still working a full-time job. You know, you do have a family, a husband, and kids. And how did you manage that? And when did you decide to outsource?
So once it got to where I was spending more time learning how to better optimize my ads, that I was just like, you know what, I feel like I can pay someone from like Fiverr or something to do this optimization instead of me spending the time learning how to do it. It was just, it was a lot, it was worth the money. So I did find a wonderful guy on Fiverr very cost effective. And what was nice is instead of just doing it, he taught me how to do it.
Right.
Over like, I think
It's a
we
great
had
point.
we had like 5 1-hour Zoom sessions, all recorded. He gave me everything. And he managed them for 30 days, like 5 ads for 30 days. It was like $120.
Yeah.
I mean, it was wonderful. And I learned a ton, and then I felt confident to move to that next step to take my ads to the next level.
Again, another perfect example of you don't have to go 0 to 60. So you don't have to go from no marketing help to a full-blown marketing agency. There are steps you can take in between on almost everything, accounting, bookkeeping, all of it. You don't have to go from managing all your own books, managing all your own books to giving all of your stuff away and have a full-blown accountant who does it all for you.
Right.
There are in-between steps that you can do where you spend some money, but you don't rope yourself into things that you maybe can't afford or are going to strap you. So that's another really, really solid point that you made there. Okay, so talk about, did you have a slow period? Did you have a period after you got going where things slowed down? And if not, do you attribute that to anything, or do you just think you got traction, which is really important, and it just kept rolling?
I really think I just got traction and it kept rolling. Things every month my sales were higher and higher until June, and June was my, at that time, obviously June was like 3 times all of my other months.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I thought aesthetics was supposed to be kind of, slowing down.
Yeah, July and
here.
August for the record.
Yeah, so I figured that out, but which July was horrific.
Yeah.
I think I had like 5 clients the whole month,
Yeah.
where months previously, I had a crap ton more than that. So yeah, really my only slow period was July. I got traction and I just kept going. And mind you, I was working 8 to 5.
Yeah.
So everyone that I treated, I saw from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And then on the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you're describing that, what you're describing though is what is something important to note. Not everybody can do that, right? Or sure, maybe everybody can, or most people can, but it is hard. You described that as one of the most exhausting, fatigue period time of your life, because,
Don't recommend it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I say this, I said it, we were on Patreon last night, doing a live, and I said it, you get to the point where you have your full-time job and then you have this, and there's most often time runs out. You literally can't physically do it anymore. Maybe your side job is here and your full-time job is here. And then if this is $5,000 a month and this is $2,000, well, that's $7,000 a month. If you be very, very careful to not adjust your life to the $7,000 a month. You want to keep it and start working it more and more towards this lifestyle, and these are just number examples, because at some point you're going to have to drop this one off if you want this one to rise up. I'm a huge fan of that. People ask me all the time about that. I think you came, we talked about you, we went through your stuff, and it's very difficult because there's a lot of factors, and unless you have a one-on-one, it's almost impossible to know. But tell us what happened when you turned your attention in to your business, or when you knew you were going to let go. That's tough because we have how short is our window there? A month?
Probably.
Yeah, not very long. So what we're talking about, or what's going on in our heads, is that very quickly when she decided that she was going to go full-time in her business, we had an opportunity at Smiley. We were bringing on someone full-time and needed her skill set. And I approached Mercedes, or vice versa, about her coming on full-time with us. So we don't have a great, the one thing that's lacking from her story is what happened when she turned her attention to her business.
Well, and that was the thing, because I was nervous about quitting my full-time job. What if I don't get enough clients? So I actually I offered you my consulting services, right? Like I've done SOPs and other jobs. I've done things like that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you were like, well, actually.
Yeah.
And I was really caught off guard because I didn't expect the conversation to go in that direction. And that wasn't what I wanted to do, right? In my mind, I wanted to run the Mercedes of Botox and kill it. And then I was like, well, but I kind of have. So
yeah, kind of did that. So so that, but talk a little bit more about, let's back up to when you decided to quit, because we did have the conversation and we sat down and talked about it, and I was very encouraging, if I recall, because you had crushed it, but it's still, what was going through your head? Talk even about, if you don't mind, share your thoughts with like your husband, even some more personal details about, and be transparent, like financially we could do this. I can't fail, but I could have backed up. Just talk a little bit through that.
It was definitely like the most vomity month of my life.
Yeah.
At the time I had one of my teenage stepdaughters living with me. And so our expenses had increased anyways, just because teenagers eat a lot of food and things like that.
And it's a girl. I mean, goodness sakes.
Right. Yeah, all the things that they need. And she was in her senior year, so you've got all of those expenses. So just thinking through that, I was quite. I was very overwhelmed. It was hard to pull the trigger, even after I spoke to you. And I mean, I gave Carla everything. I was like, look at all of my expenses. These are all the streaming services I have. What do you think? Can I make it? And my husband, he's very, very supportive, and he really just wants me to be happy.
Yeah.
And so he's like, as long as you're going to be happy, he's like, you've been doing a great job. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think we can figure it out. Worst case scenario, I work some overtime. I really think we can figure it out. And he's like, and let's just be honest. We all know HCA is still, that you have places you can go back
as a nurse, you can go back. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was the big thing, was being realistic. Okay, yes, financially, I can't completely fail, like you said, but I do have some ground to stand on here. And actually one of my really good friends who I worked in the ER with, she helped me as well to look at how much profit have I actually been making each and every single month, and how much would I have made? Yes, would I have been paying myself?
Yeah.
At this point in time, my paychecks are going to cut off.
Yeah.
So am I going to have that profit to then be able to pay myself?
Yeah, yeah. It is a difficult time and thing to decide, and no one can make that decision for you.
I think I was a basket case. I think
a little
I cried.
bit. Yeah.
I cried to Adrian.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot. I remember you texting and telling me you put your notice in, and it's happening in August 1st, and I mean, it's a big moment. We've had several injectors do that, and they all go through the exact same thing. So, your story is obviously just one of extreme success, but it's Mary and my story is one of extreme success too. But yours is a good example of you had all the similar things, but you took a very realistic amount of time to get to a point of, I'm going to do this.
Right.
Much sooner than 6-9 months is asking to be on the top 2% of the bell curve, which is hard. It's very difficult to do it in under 6 months, and to get to a point where you can replace, a $100,000 salary or whatever it is. And that's profit. I mean, you got to pay yourself, but you just got to run your business. So it's even more money you'd be making in revenue a year. Is just really difficult. So I just feel like your story is really doable. Is a really good highlight of, you didn't have a lot of missteps. You didn't make a lot of mistakes. And so that is something to consider. There, people will make mistakes. But it is why you lead and are the lead voice for us when it comes to new injectors, because there are steps you can take, and you're a shining example of that, to set yourself up for success before you start, as you learn. And it's not like you were a business person. It's not like you knew, what was going to happen.
And I think that's what made it for me, is not being a business person. I treated people the way that I wanted to be treated.
Right.
I followed up with my Botox clients.
Right.
I put an alert in my calendar for 3 days and 2 weeks, and I followed up with every single one
Right.
of them.
Yep.
I made sure to give them that customer service that I knew that I wanted, and I educated the heck out of them, because that's not always very common in this field, and
Right.
just, in nursing in general. And so, when I go back and look at the reviews that I have from clients, I feel like education or educate is mentioned in almost every single one of them.
Yeah, I agree. You're, even now to this day when we get reviews on you, it's education is like the top thing. And that is a differentiator. Mary and I agree. We focused on the same thing. We were very educational, explaining why you needed this particular medicine, why you need this dose of this medicine. It's a prescription medicine. The FDA has approved XYZ, and really being informative and taking that time to slow down. We always recommend new injector, new client appointments to be at least 30, if not 45 minutes on Botox. And there's a lot of places, you can go in to the McDonald's of Botox places, and you can, get in their chair and get out of my chair in 5 minutes.
Right.
There is none of that stuff. So some people like that, which is fine, but a lot of people, we still have so much opportunity. People don't even know what Botox is. Literally, people are like, wait, so is this Botox or a filler? Is a filler a Botox or what? I mean, it's fascinating. So educating people is just
huge.
Really important. Yeah. Well, what else? Any other thoughts or things about your experience you want to share?
I mean, hands down, yes, I was successful, but I still could not have done any of this without the help that Smiley offered.
Well, bravo.
And truly, I mean, I all the things that you guys have in the background, the SOPs, our injector handbook, I mean, all of the things that I didn't have to think about,
right,
that were done for me,
right,
and set up to keep me, because I'm huge with compliance and safety and, you know, working legally within my scope of practice. I don't want to lose my nursing license.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to be that person on the news.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And if I lost my nursing license, I don't know what I would do for a career anyways.
Yeah, we'd all be lost.
Yeah, so just having all of that support, and that doesn't mean that I had access to you 24/7, right?
Right.
You're running a huge company, but you know, the people that were put in place to help were huge.
Yeah, our resources. And you're bringing up a point that's applicable to all businesses. The resources are there. It's, are you going to them first, or are you trying to take a shortcut and just ask somebody? And if you will, again, it's that whole, don't be given the fish if it will teach somebody how to fish. That whole mentality of that really plays true. And the ones that are successful truly are the ones that are willing to teach themselves and exhaust their resources before they just want someone to hand it to them.
Yeah.
The ones who want the handouts are still sitting where they were 2 years ago because they just are looking for a handout and they don't have that spirit. And I think that's neat that there's a introspect, like a self-awareness that needs to happen with that as well. If you don't have an entrepreneurial spirit, if you don't have a hustle, if you get, you know, home from a day at work and you're just done, it may not be the right fit for you. And that makes you feel trapped and all these things. That's a whole nother conversation. But you've got to have the ability, the energy, the time to be willing to sacrifice a lot to make it happen.
And to be willing to keep learning.
Yes,
I've done
always.
more education or continuing education since I started this career than I probably did like in my last 3 years prior to starting this.
Well, it's people's faces.
It's
so
people's faces.
I mean, we were dealing with people's lives, but you know, for some reason the face thing just really gets you going.
It's a lot more stressful, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being on. We will continue to have Mercedes on, and we will continue to have other people on. I want to bring on our VP of Injector Growth, or Strategic Growth and Training. Is going to come on one episode coming up, and we're going to continue to talk to them about how they're growing people, because it's all applicable to anybody out there. I do want to do a shameless plug for our Patreon. We put on, Mercedes was just on last night. She sees what's on there. We do all kinds of educational videos. There's a lot of free information on there. There's a lot of stuff that's paid for $50 a month. We put 3 to 6 new videos, items, consents, procedures, all kinds of stuff on there. Legal, business, clinical. Mary does live injections. I try to help with, I have a basic accounting class on there, like just all kinds of stuff to try to help our community, because when we help each other, we're just elevating the aesthetics industry as a whole. We talk constantly about it being such a jerk industry, and we just don't feed into that. So sharing people's stories, exactly what they did to be successful, there's plenty to go around. If you enjoy this podcast, please do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate it, and share it if you find it valuable, because if you find it valuable, then there's certainly somebody else out there who's going to find it valuable as well. And yeah, thank you again, Mercedes. We appreciate it. And we will see you guys. This will drop at 10 a.m. on Sunday. It's probably, or I guess I should say that. And our episodes drop every Sunday at 10 a.m. And yeah, we will talk to you again. Thank you. Bye. I suck at ending.